Hello everyone and welcome to the History Quiz with me, Joshua Daniels. This is the History Quiz for August 2024. If you're new here, this is a series of monthly quizzes I'm doing throughout the year of 2024 and they're all focused on history. So let's quickly run through the rules. So there's no conferring, you can play as teams or on your own, but there's no discussion or cheating between teams or players. No using search engines or internet to find out the answers. No, there's only one answer per question and only 1 point per correct answer. You have 5 categories, there's 30 questions and there's 15 seconds to answer each one except for category 2. You do not need to answer all the questions, but you'll not get a point for any questions left unanswered. You won't be penalised, but you won't be rewarded. So, the first category is famous faces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 10 old pictures or pictures of historic figures, and all you have to do is write down which figure you think it is. So without further ado, let's start on the first question of the first category, and your time starts now. Who is this? And who is this? And who is this? 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 The ultimate face, who is this? And final face, number 10, who is this? And that marks the end of the famous categories. That's the first category over. The second category is events and dates. This is a little bit different. You'll have a minute to answer this. Now there are 5 potential points here to be earned, and what will happen is you will see 5 events on the left hand side of the screen labelled 1 to 5, and you will see 5 dates on the right hand side of the screen labelled A to E. All you have to do is match up the event to the corresponding date. You will get 1 point for each event that you match up to the correct date. So you'll have a minute once I've finished reading out each of the events and dates. So, event number 1, the Act of Union is passed. Number 2, Beijing becomes capital of China for the first time. Number 3, India gains independence. Number 4, Dublin founded by the Vikings. Number 5, founding of the Mexican city of Tenochtitlan. And the dates: A, 1707, B, 1325, C, 1261, D, 1947, and E, 841. Your minute starts now. Halfway through. "15 seconds left. And that marks the end of category number 2. Moving on to the third category now, true or false. So you're going to see a historical statement here, and you have to write down whether you think it's true or false. As always, 1 point if you get it right. And without further ado, let's move on to the first question. 5 questions for this category. True or false? Bernardo Pisano designed the Tower of Pisa to lean only as only God could make perfect things. Two, true or false? Horatio Nelson and Napoleon Bonaparte were roughly the same height. Number 3. Rafael Esposito is credited with inventing pasta as we know it today. Number 4. True or false? Cocaine was discovered by accident when pigs were seen crushing and snorting coca leaves. And final question, number 5. True or false? In 1980, untested college players from the USA beat the official Soviet hockey team. And that marks the end of the third category. On to the fourth and penultimate category. This is which came first. So I'm going to put up 2 historical events, and you simply have to write down which event you think came first. So, without further ado, the first question. Number 1, which came first? The invention of basketball or the invention of baseball? Number 2, which came first? The Irish War of Independence or the Ukrainian War of Independence? Number 3 even. Which came first? The founding of London or the founding of Paris? For the penultimate question, which came first, the Battle of Hastings or the Battle of Agincourt? And finally, number 5, which came first, the discovery of the neutron or the discovery of the proton? And that marks the end of the 4th and penultimate category. Moving on to the 5th and final category, general history knowledge. Very straightforward. There will be 5 questions, 1 point per correct answer, and they will be about just general history knowledge. All you do is have to write down the answer to the questions. So, without further ado, let's move on to the first question. Number 1. Al Martino's song, Here in Your Heart, recorded in 1952, was the first ever what? Two. Which country had the most deaths during the Second World War? Number 3. Who was the first person to reach the South Pole? Ultimate question, number 4. Where was the Titanic built? I'm looking for the city, but if you give me the country, I also will accept it. And finally, number 5. Woodrow Wilson was president during which war? And that marks the end of the history quiz for August 2024. So, if we're all ready, let's move on to the answers. So the first category was famous faces. So the famous faces were Francisco Franco for number 1. Number 2 was Michelangelo. Number 3 was Leonid Brezhnev. Number 4 was Susan B. Anthony. Number 5 was Aretha Franklin. Number 6 was Claudette Colvin. Number 7 was Charles de Gaulle. Number 8 was Janis Joplin. Number 9 was Peter the Great. And number 10 was Galileo Galilei. Category number 2, events and dates. So, number 1, the Act of Union is passed, went to A at 1707, so number 1 was A. Number 2, Beijing becomes capital of China for the first time, was C at 1261, so 2 was C. Number 3, India gains independence, was D at 1947, so 3 was D. Number 4, Dublin was founded by the Vikings, was E 841, so 4 was E. And number 5, founding of the Mexican city of Tenochtitlan was B 1325, so 5 was B. Category number 3, true or false. So, number 1, Bernardo Pisano designed the Tower of Pisa to lean as only God could make perfect things. That was false. It was actually because there were shallow foundations and unstable subsoil. Number 2, Horatio Nelson and Napoleon Bonaparte were roughly the same height. That is true, they were around 5 foot 7 inches. Number 3, Rafael Esposito is credited with inventing pasta as we know it today. That's false. It's actually pizza. Number 4, cocaine was discovered by accident when pigs were seen crushing and snorting coca leaves. That is actually false. And number 5, in 1980, untested college players from the USA beat the Soviet official hockey team. That is true, it was known as the Miracle on Ice. Moving on to the 4th category now, which came first. So, number 1, which came first, the invention of basketball and the invention of baseball. It was the invention of baseball at least 1839, basketball around 1891. Number 2, which came first, the Irish War of Independence or the Ukrainian War of Independence. It was the Ukrainian. Irish started in 1919 and it ended in 1923. Ukrainian was 1917 and lasted until 1921. Number 3, Which came first, the founding of London or the founding of Paris? It was the founding of Paris. Paris was 3000 BC, whereas London was around 47 AD. Number 4, which came first, the Battle of Hastings or the Battle of Agincourt? It was Hastings. Battle of Hastings was 1066, Battle of Agincourt was 1415. And finally, which came first, the discovery of the neutron or the discovery of the proton? It was the discovery of the proton. Proton was 1917, and the discovery of the neutron was 1932. Moving on to the answers for the final category now, the fifth and final one, general history knowledge. Number 1. Al Martino's song, Here in Your Heart, recorded in 1952, was the first ever what? It was the first ever UK number 1. Number 2. Which country had the most deaths in the Second World War? It was the Soviet Union. Number 3. Who was the first person to reach the South Pole? It was Roald Amundsen. Number 4. Where was the Titanic built? It was Belfast as the city, but if you put the country, that's fine. And number 5. Woodrow Wilson was president during which war? It was the First World War. So, just like to say a big thank you all for playing. Let me know what score you got down in the comments, and hopefully I will see you next month.